Hello and welcome back to my craft room. This is going to be a bit of a different one for me. You might have seen the first part of the process of making this kind of mixed media piece when I created a charcoal portrait where I scanned it at various stages. Didn't come out very well, but it gives you an idea. So that's the kind of charcoal portrait I ended up with. This was after a lesson which was part of Let's Face It 2021, and this particular class was with Cara Bullock, who's like the hostess of Let's Face It. The module we're in at the moment is the theme is to be inspired by another artist. So she was inspired by Robert Kelly with his wonderful charcoal portraits, and also Paul Cristina, who I actually hadn't come across before, I can't believe. And this was one of his pieces that she included a picture of, which I mean it's very dark and quite disturbing and challenging, but I just love it. I love everything about it. I'd love to see them in real life. I think his pieces are quite huge as well. There is so much texture and interest in here, and so many kind of thought-provoking. Just look up his work if like me you've never come across it before. Wow, what a long rabbit hole that was. Anyway, waffling on. So Cara provided us with this photo reference. I did my charcoal portrait from that. I filmed that process. So if you haven't seen it and you would like to, I will try and remember to leave a link to that in the description box below. But if not, I will have put it in my online art class process playlist if you want to check it out. Anyway, so the scary part, because I was actually quite pleased with the portrait in the end, and it took quite a while doing it, well, a couple of hours, and then I had to, for the next part of the process, I had to tear it up. Now, I decided I would come on and show you first what I ended up with, which is this. It's not exactly how I wanted it to turn out, but it was great fun to do. I used so many different texture pastes and paints, pastels, a lot of, I think it's called sgraffito, where you scratch into wet paint and into the pastes and things. Water soluble crayons to get a lot of the colour here. I just used charcoal, a lot of charcoal, white and black charcoal. I think there's some white Chinagraph pencil there. Anyway, I had a great time. And I stitched into it. Sort of poked holes through first and stitched into it, and then after all of that I went back in with white and black charcoal and sort of brought the portrait back a little bit. I'm not sure it's exactly what I wanted, but yeah, I probably learned a lot from it, and I loved the whole idea. And what Paul Cristina does is make these wonderful charcoal portraits, and then he cannibalizes his own work and puts it back together into something even more amazing. And so that was really inspiring. I did also, because I had a lot of leftover scans, I also had to go piecing them together in different ways, because I quite enjoyed playing with this whole idea of reconstructing to make something different, and also the idea of tearing away layers to see what's underneath. I liked all that. So that's a little quickie one. I just sort of 5 minutes and that's another version of that. So I might play around with that idea in my art journal a bit and just see what else I can do with that. Anyway, so what I'm going to do, because it's got a long process, and because also I've got a new camera setup, so the beginning of the process I was using my old camera setup and I'm now using the new one. So I think what I'm going to do is try and edit all the different clips together, because I kept coming back to it over the course of a few days. I think I did the first one a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to try and edit all those clips together and do a voiceover, which I haven't done for a long time. So I'm going to do that. So it's going to be a patchwork on many different levels. We'll see how it goes. I hope you enjoy it and I hope you find it useful. And thanks very much for watching. Okay, switching into voiceover now. Bye. Okay, so here's my original charcoal portrait with a good coat of transparent gesso on it. It's dried a bit strangely, no matter. There are the scans, which I think I may be able to use later on as part of the finished piece. And now I'm starting to go through and find some Collage Elements. Here I'm looking at Paul Cristina's piece for inspiration for colours and texture. I love those. I love that colour combination. I've got some pieces of tissue here. I saved packaging and all sorts of things. There's some printed off pieces of ephemera here. Hadn't thought of using skulls, but I don't think they made the cut in the end. Those were scanned and printed off from one of my own paintings. You can see the kind of random bits and bobs that I save in my collage drawer. And this whole process I quite enjoy. That was baking parchment, a really manky piece of reused and reused and reused baking parchment. I wash it in between and use it again when it's finally too manky. Here I'm going through my folder that I keep with pieces I've cut out of magazines and things. I thought I might use some of the sort of coloured flesh pieces there, but I didn't in the end. So that's my sort of collated little collection of collage elements there. I've got some paints and things I'm getting out ready. Here's my Neocolour 2 watercolour crayons. I'm just swatching them and activating them with water there. Those are acrylic inks in black and white. That's my Tim Holtz distressing tool I'm going to use for distressing the edges of the pieces when I cut it up. And now I'm just having a practice on one of the scanned pieces because that didn't hurt quite so much. And actually I quite enjoyed this in the end. It's quite liberating, good old warm up. Yeah, I quite enjoyed this, and I will play around with this more in my art journal. Having a go with the skull printouts there, which didn't end up making the cut, but that may come into play again at a later date. You see, I'm playing with all sorts of ideas there. So back to the original portrait now, where that transparent gesso has dried a bit strangely. I'm trying sanding it off. That's not really helping. In fact, it's making it worse. In the end, I just decided it didn't matter. I'm going to distress it so badly anyway. So I've gone in now with some of the quinacridone golden paint, just a sort of wash of it to give it a different colour. Now I've got some black acrylic ink that I've watered down, and I'm just giving a wash again just to sort of start distressing it and maybe cover up some of that lumpiness from the transparent gesso as well. Now this is the scary bit, cutting straight through the middle of it. Oh, that hurt. That really hurt, that did. But now I've got going. I'm quite getting into it. And then I thought some torn edges would be fun. And cutting it into smaller pieces. I don't want the whole of that sheet of mixed media paper that I'm working on to be covered with the portrait. I want to use other collage pieces, of course. So. But there we are, I've put it all together, and now I'm going to start taking away pieces to see what I'm going to decide to leave behind and use in the finished piece. The Tim Holtz distressing tool is being used there. I did think about stapling some, adding some staples, but I don't think I did that in the end. I'm more distressing, inking the edges, using a Neocolour crayon again there to ink the edges. Oh, a bit more tearing. See, I'm getting carried away now. Once I got comfortable with it, I really enjoyed that whole destroying it and reconstructing it thing. I'm just sort of sketching in the rough shape of her shoulders now. And I think the next thing is, I'm going to start slotting in some little pieces of my collage papers to just reveal as kind of underlayers, so that when you peel back you can see glimpses of what's underneath. I loved that idea. I found that a very inspiring part of Paul Cristina's work. Just loved it. I was so bowled over by his work. I'm starting to do a lot of stuff on the body here, but in fact most of this you don't even really see in the end, but it's all part of the process. I wanted some kind of a headscarf thing and a wrap around the shoulders with the kind of lovely turquoisey blues in, and then I wanted the rest to be, I wanted the black and the white and the grey, and then those kind of ochre colours. And I'm just starting to play around now with the background and the body piece. I've stuck a lot on and torn it all off again, as you can see, gone down a different path. All of it, this 20 minutes working process in this video was more like 20 hours coming back over a period of a few days. There we are, and I started to stick those collage pieces down now. I've gone more with the ochre colours on the right hand side and working towards the more sort of greys and blacks and whites on the other side. In my original piece, the face was darker on the left, our left, but the background was lighter on that side. Now I'm starting to add some kind of a headscarf arrangement using what I've torn off of the body actually, and I quite like that at this point, although I do end up covering up quite a lot of it. I think I start to toy with the idea of making some kind of a suggestion of almost a halo. Or these are the different kinds of texture paste and things I used. Turns out one of them was all dried up. Some of those I've had for years. I'm doing some more scribbling in here. That was another thing inspired by Paul Cristina's work. What's going to happen next? Oh yes, gesso, some plain white gesso now. I'm going to knock back a lot of that background. Well, not just the background. I think I'll start with the background and then get carried away. And I'm just sort of scribbling it on with a bit of old credit card or something there. And now I'm going in with my fingers because you got to do that. At this point I really, oh that's pumice, that's the pumice paste. That was very fun to use. And probably shouldn't have done it with my fingers, but you know, now I'm scratching into that with a knitting needle. I think this is called graffito. You scratch into wet paint and stuff. And again, very much inspired by the Paul Cristina piece. This is a crackle paste, which is lovely. When it dries, it makes these lovely cracks, and the paint all seeps into the cracks. You do have to kind of let it dry naturally to get the best effect with it. I think that is still crackle paste, and I'm scribbling into it. I wanted it really, really distressed, because now I've got over the trauma of cutting the piece up. I'm well away. I think this is gesso again now. Put it on, taking it off. There was a lot of putting on, taking off, back and forth, back and forth. Charcoal pencil there. I've got into the new camera arrangement now, I think, because the lighting's all different. And I'm showing you some of the texture now. I've gone away and left it to dry. Some of that lovely crackle paste texture, and from the different textures of paper underneath as well. There's my Neo Colour 2 water-soluble crayons. They're brilliant if you've not tried them. I've pulled out a few that fit my colour scheme. And then I've got some thread and a pokey tool there, because I'm going to stitch. I'm going to do some stitching into this later on. So now I'm starting to scribble on with the Neo Colour pencils and activate it with water, and that's when the colours really start to sing. Using a scrubby old brush and then a mangy old rag. Putting it on, taking it off, putting it on, taking it off. There was a lot of that, just slowly building up those layers. I didn't really know. I had a rough idea in my head of where I wanted to go, but I had no idea what I was doing really. So there's a lot of this back and forth in. Oh, a bit of a pause for breath. I think I speeded some of this up too much. I haven't got time to say everything. More of that lovely kind of almost like an azure blue, isn't it? I love that blue. And I'm sandpapering. I'm going in with some more of the kind of yellow ochre colours and the terracotta. And just building up and building up. And those paints start to sink into the cracks in that crackle paint. Now I'm having a go on the background. Adding some colour to that. I liked the idea of it almost looking like there was kind of perhaps sunlight coming from that direction, because that side of the face is lighter. Now I've got the Neo Colour 2 white crayon, and I'm just going into the face with that, picking up some of those highlights that have been lost. The nose and the chin, the cheek, the forehead. Just to sort of bring my portrait back a little bit now. And now I'm just sort of this is where I start toying with the idea of, well, it could be a kind of a suggestion of a halo. So I'm just carrying on, sort of rediscovering all the highlights, lowlights, midtones on my portrait, using the charcoal pencil, the Neo Colour crayons. I think some white charcoal comes out as well. Here I'm sort of emulating the way Paul Cristina uses ink dots, dark ink dots, but it didn't make the cut with mine. It just didn't seem to work. I love the look of it on his, but I just couldn't make it work. So they all came off again. Layering on some more gesso now to knock back some of the bits, scribbling into it to get some more texture. While I've got the gesso, I've added to that halo, and I'm going into the other side of the face and using the gesso to carry on building up those highlights. So there's a lot of, like, you know, dipping in and out of all the different media. Or here's where I'm starting to stitch. So I poked all the holes with the poker tool first, because there's a lot of layers of paper and paint there to go through. Tying that off carefully at the back. And I use this old twine that we've had knocking around for years. It used to be in John's dad's shed. Love that twine. Okay, back to the Neo Colour crayons now, and adding sort of some deeper colours now to the top, whatever it is. Oh, and I'm starting to pick up some of those separate little collage pieces at the back, using the in the background rather, using that charcoal pencil, of putting it on and then smudging it in with my fingers. Just to, yeah, because that's the sort of look that I wanted. This is a white Chinagraph pencil, so it's kind of a water resistant thing that you can use on almost any surface really, and you can scrape into it too. So I'm just putting little dots of texture and stuff there. Back to the charcoal pencil, back into the portrait again, redefining some of those details that have been lost along the way. There was so much backing and forthing in this. Yeah, I think what I've done is I've got my scan of my original portrait on the left there, and I'm starting to sort of have a look at that and just make sure I've got some of the details back. Yeah, some of those highlights. This is the white charcoal pencil this time, or no, actually I think it's a Prismacolor or Polychromos colour pencil. I'm not sure from here. I know I used both. Yeah, she's starting to come back now. But I found it was almost too much of a contrast between what looks almost like a black and white photo there and that more natural looking background. So it's quite difficult. More charcoal here, and then in a minute I'm going to be using a blending stump. So I'm really laying on a lot of charcoal here because I want to really deepen those shadows. And here's the blending stump, so I'm blending that all in. Yeah, I've quite enjoyed this part of the process. Just titivating now, really. And the same thing on the sort of folds of the top, charcoal pencil and the blending stump. Those were soft pastels in grey tones, so it's white right through to grey. Very underused, that set. I've had it for years. I must have a go at some portraits with it. And here I'm showing you some of the texture close up, where now that crackle paint has, all the paints and inks that I've used have seeped into the texture and really sort of brought it all out. Yeah, it's difficult to pick up all that texture in a photograph or on film. It's much more impressive in real life. Anyway, I'm going to hand back to myself now. I'm going to stop doing the talk over and I'm going to hand back to my original film. Just as I start playing with the pieces of my scanned images that I've got left. Yeah. So I might do a couple like that, which will probably just end up in my art journal or something. Thanks again for joining me today, and I will see you again really soon. Bye.